Hello, everyone, and welcome to the audio review. Today, we're going to be talking about terms and what exactly I mean when I talk about certain aspects of sound quality when I'm talking about products. Okay? Also, I wanted to mention real quick about the name change. So, the Shirtless Audiophile was a bit of a quirk. It was a bit of a quirk, and it was more kind of a sort of a gimme in terms of getting people sort of to think about it. The idea of me being shirtless and reviewing audio equipment, it was kind of a gimmick. But it got to be tiresome quickly. It got to be tiresome also because I got a huge amount of criticism for it. And, to be honest with you, I just don't feel like opening up YouTube constantly and having comments about, oh God, gross, and these sorts of things. Now, I'm fairly immune to criticism. However, it does get tiresome pretty quickly. So, hence the name change to the audio review. And the other reason for the audio review aspect, the REVUE, is the fact that review, the word, meant to be lighthearted, meant to be topical, meant to be sort of kind of on the surface, sort of casual. And that was kind of the idea uh, I'm sort of ultimately going for. And when I get my new camera back, the replacement, and start making the quality content that I want to be making, that's kind of the way I want my reviews to go. Sort of casual, sort of very approachable, sort of easy. So anyway, let's get to terms. So first off, we have sound quality. Now, sound quality is a very generic term, a very general term, but what I typically mean is the overall aspect of how well it sounds in terms of detail. Typically, when I mention, oh, it has great sound quality, typically I'm meaning it sounds pleasant, it sounds enjoyable, more in a general way. Okay? I'm not really talking about sort of a specific thing. Again, more of a general sense of it sounds good, it sounds pleasurable. Okay? Now, what do I mean by tone or color? I like to combine the two words and effectively mean the same thing. And what I mean is I mean the different tonal and timbral variations in music. Different notes sound different, obviously. However, some pieces of equipment have a tendency or can have a tendency to homogenize the sound to where very closely related notes can almost sound alike. However, there are distinct differences, and especially with piano, you have a broad range of notes and an expression that can be achieved. And piano truly is my benchmark instrument for this concept. A good piece of equipment should be able to display all that intricacy and all of that variation effectively. And you should be able to see and hear, more specifically, all the color and the tones of music. And you should be able to do so in an enjoyable way. What do I mean by PRAT? Well, PRAT, as the acronym says, is pace, rhythm, attack, and timing. And the idea of this is really a British concept, and at least that's the way it was originally started. And I believe, although I could be mistaken, it was originally done by the American press in talking about the way British amplifiers tended to sound versus like an American amplifier or otherwise. And the idea was basically that it portrays in a propulsive way the rhythm of music. Basically, in a rhythm first aspect. If you've ever heard a piece of name gear or Rega or the older Cyrus or certain Arcam amplifiers, all of which are British made amplifiers, they come across as sort of, you get the rhythm and the precision of that rhythm coming across in the music very highly. Things don't sound slow, things don't sound reduced in terms of speed or decay. They sound exactly how they should in terms of their fastness and their speed. A great example, in my opinion, is Fleetwood Mac, the song Don't Stop. A very popular song, very noted song. If you listen to that on some, let's call it tube gear or American gear, the song can come across sort of ponderously. you know, don't stop. You know, anyway, it can come across sort of ponderously in terms of the way it's being rendered in the rhythm of the music. However, British equipment will typically have that rhythm first. So it really comes through in the four. And you hear the da 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 da. And it doesn't sound fast. I suppose by direct comparison, they have a tendency to sound fast. However, in isolation, it doesn't come across that way. And more specifically, the more you listen to that and have that type of sound, the more, in my opinion, you realize that that sounds correct and it sounds right. Not everybody will agree with that statement. However, obviously, that is the beauty of the hobby that we are in. Anyway, so sound staging. And that can mean different things to different people. In my opinion, I try to follow the classic approach. For example, let's look at Miles Davis' Kind of Blue. You have in the right channel, you have Bill Evans very clearly. Next to him, you have Cannonball Adderley. Then, kind of next to him, you have Paul Chambers. Then Miles himself, and then Coltrane, and then on the far right, you have Jimmy Cobb on drums. And so what you end up with is this sound stage of players, and particularly on sounds like So What, and of course Blue and Green, and my personal favorite from the album, although not officially on the album, but on this version anyway, is on Green Dolphin Street. And you can have this tremendous sense of left to right balance of players, and everybody's kind of on a stage, and you can hear each one being played. Sometimes not so much. Sometimes they kind of blend together and create certain sounds. But that is what I mean by the traditional soundstage. Sometimes when I talk about soundstage, I also mean kind of left to right delineation and balance. And, you know, I'll say, well, this piece doesn't have great soundstage. And what I mean by that is that the left channel isn't really coming through as well as the right, or vice versa, for example. It's just that maybe a little weak, or for whatever reason, the balance is off a little bit. And I don't mean balance as in power, I just mean balance in that delineation between left and right. And there are a couple of really good songs that I really like for checking left to right delineation, one of which is David Bowie's Space Oddity. When he sings, his voice is kind of in the center at first, but then two separately recorded versions of him are played between the left and the right. The right, technically, by the mix of the song and the way it's originally recorded, the right tends to be a little bit stronger in intonation, but you have moments where the left is also strong. It comes in as strong or stronger than the right, but it's a separate vocal coming through, and I get the impression I know how that song should sound, and so in the idea of that, that's what I mean by kind of delineation between left and right. So anyway, that kind of couples in a soundstage. Those could have been two separate things, but I decided to sort of combine them. All right, everybody. Well, that was it. Those are my most common used terms when I talk about hi-fi. And I suppose I could have gone a bit further, but I don't want to get this video too long, to be honest with you. Number one. Number two, I did get my camera again. I did get my replacement camera just today. So probably in a week or two, I'm going to be doing the Meze 109 Pro, and then promptly followed by the iFi Audio Griffin. Although I may go ahead and record the Griffin with my phone, which is what I'm doing now, and which is what I have been doing, and then just save the camera for the Meze 109. But either way, stay tuned. There is obviously new stuff coming up. So